So everyone, for this tutorial, we're going to set up the avatar. We're going to add the arrangement points. So I'm in Maya first. I'm just going to import in the mesh just to double check it. So this is the mesh I'm going to go with, the one that I placed the files up there. It's Nick's model. It's the Subdivision 2 model. Feel free to use the Subdivision 3 or Subdivision 1 model, whichever one you want to use for your avatar. I'm using 2 because it works just fine. It's smooth enough and it's not too low poly. So this is the model. It looks correct. I'm just now going to Marvelous. So guys, we're back in Marvelous. So let me just add in my avatar, Nick model, the male anatomy one. I'll set the scale to 1000 and then I'm going to hit OK. And that looks about accurate. So 1000% scale was accurate to the original avatar they had in Marvelous. So I'm going to delete all these and just add in my avatar. Delete all avatars, file, open, avatar. And it's still set at 1000. I hit OK. And there we go. So the arrangement points. Right now, if you go here, you can't turn any of these things on. They haven't been set up. So to set them up, you have to go to the avatar editor. So just select it under avatar, avatar editor. After you're in this menu, you can go to arrangements. This is where you'll set up all the arrangements. I'll show you how they're actually used afterwards, but for now, we'll just set it up. So first, you have the board, and then you have the placement. You have to add the bounding volumes that the points will be placed onto. So these don't have to be exactly precise, but more precise you are, a little bit easier it'll be. So you could add one, and it just starts in the bottom. I'm going to start with doing the chest first, so I'm just going to select it. I'm going to slide it up into his body area. So to change the scale and everything, you just go over here. There's all the stuff here. First, I'm going to name this chest. So I know this is the chest bounding volume. And then I'm going to change the height. It's a little too high. Let me put it to 500. And I'm going to change the radius. So let me change this to 250 and 250. Right now, it's really around him. It's a little too big. I'm going to just place it a little bit better. I'll change it down to 200. And just play with it until you get the arrangement you want. 175, 175. And I don't want it clipping into the mesh. Bigger the better. So I'm going to change the radius again from 175 to 225. So I want it a little bit wider. And now I just want to get his back unclipped. I have to make it a little bit wide on the profile, so I'm going to change it to 200. I'm going to raise it up a little bit. Okay, so this is my bounding volume for the chest. I'm going to now add points on top of this. These points will be used for placement of the fabric. To add the arrangement points on top of this, you just go under point, placement, and add. I'll add an arrangement point. I'll call this chest middle. When you first add the point on here, you're not going to see anything added onto the mesh. So you have to first assign it to one of the bounding volumes. So arrangement bounding volume option here is not assigned. I'm going to assign this to chest. Once I assign it, you'll see the pivot added on top. So after I add this one arrangement point in the middle, it depends how many you want to add. You could add one for the back, you could add one for the belt line, and you could add one for the neck if you'd like. It's all your preference depending how many you want to add. You could always add more later on if you want. So let me just add one for the belt line. So let me name this chest, so I know it goes with the chest, and then belt. And after I add it, it'll place it exactly the same place as the original one since I did not move it. So to move it around, make sure you're on it, and you can move it on the x-axis or the y-axis. So before I can move it anywhere, I got to make sure I assign it to something. So let me assign it to the chest again. And then to move it, I have to move it on the x or the y. So I'll move it on the y just because I want to lower it down to more the belt area. And then I'll just round this up to 10. So offset, basically, will push it in or out of the mesh. I wouldn't change this. As long as you have your bounding volume correct, you're fine with it at the default 50. And let me just add one for the back. So I'll add another arrangement point. I'll name it chest back. And then assign it to the chest. So instead of being at 50 on the X, I'll move it around so it's 100, so it's placed directly in the middle. So now I would like to add one for the leg and for the arm. So I'll add another bounding volume, and I'll name this leg left, since this is going to be the left leg. So just select this bounding volume and then just move it up into place. And then let me change the height of it to maybe 750. I'll change the radius to 75 and 75, maybe 100 and 100. And I'll rotate it into place a little bit better. Let me change the radius to 200, or change the radius Y to 200, 150, and the radius X to 125. 110, 100, back to 100, and the radius 125. These don't have to be precise, but I just want to make it a little bit closer, just because I can. $110, $115. So that covers the leg pretty precisely. So now I'm going to add the arrangement points. So let me just add one. Say leg left top. Just because I could add one up here and one on the lower leg, the shin. And then assign it to left leg. And then let me raise it up. And then put it a little bit more on the front. So it's about 55. And then let me add one for the lower leg. Leg left, lower, and then assign it to left leg, and then lower it down. That's about right. I could add more in the back if I want. I could also add more if I needed them, but for now this is good enough. Let me just add the left arm. So let me add another bounding volume and name it. This will be arm left. And let me place it now. Let me make it a little shorter. And make the radius a little bit bigger. You could always make separate bounding volumes for the upper arm, lower arm, for the hand as you go. But for what we're doing right now, it's not that important. Let me flatten it out a little bit. If I had to do this for work, I would make these a little bit sloppier, a little bit quicker. I wouldn't spend nearly as much time just because they are just used to put the clothes on initially, and there's other ways you could just place the clothes on and use pinning techniques to place the clothes on correctly. So after I have it on there, let me add the arrangement points for one for the upper arm, one for the lower arm. So I'll add one. Arm left upper. Assign it to the arm, and then let me move it up. That's about right. And let me add one for the lower arm. Assign it to the arm, then lower it. Most likely I'm going to put the sleeve seam on the bottom of the arm, so these arrangement points I should put on the top just because when I lay the fabric on, I want it to lie around it on the opposite side of the seam. So I'm going to select these and then just move them to the top. As of now, there's no way to just mirror this onto the other side. I don't need to do that just because when I make one sleeve, I'm going to just symmetry mirror it or mirror it over, and it's just going to copy whatever I already put on this arm and it'll place on this arm just fine. So I'm not too concerned about that. It's not, I don't have the bounding volumes on this side. You could add it if you want. It's up to you. But for me, this is going to work just fine. So after I have them all added, I could close out of this. And then if you go onto the option here, the avatar icon, you have them here. So you can show the bounding volumes, which you don't really need to see. And then you also have the arrangement points, which you could see now. If I made a piece of cloth right now, it's a lot easier than just placing it on here. So like the arm, I would have to select this, rotate it, move it over, and then let it fall on the arm. And that's how I would do a sleeve. But with the arrangement points, if I turn them back on, I could select this and then just click on that and it'll just place it immediately. So it's a lot easier that way. You also have options on the very bottom. After you clicked on one of those, you have all the options down here. So if I want to offset it, I could make it a little bit bigger. Let me make the arm a little bit shorter though. So I could do a lot of things. So the position, I could place it, move the seam around basically where I would want it. I could change it on the lower arm, upper arm. That's why it doesn't matter how many of these you actually add. And then, yeah, the offset, if you want it tighter or not tight. So if you look at the seam on the bottom, you can see that it's going in. So as I go in, if I want it tighter, I already know that it's a little too baggy on him, because normally I would weld these two sides in. I'd stitch those two sides in. So I can make it shorter now, select the cloth again, and then offset it a little bit more so it's a little tighter. And then if I sim it on, it'll just fall on there easier. So they're a little bit quicker to do stuff like that. They're a little bit quicker to do stuff when you add the arrangement points. It's your preference. I originally didn't use them, and now I started adding them occasionally if I just want to go a little bit quicker on some things. The orientation will rotate it around a weird axis, so you don't have to change that. So I'm just going to put it back. And then I could delete this. So if I add another piece of cloth, if I select the cloth, there are no arrangement points signed. You could also sign it here. So if I put chest back, it'll just place it on there, and then I have all those options. You won't get those options if you don't place it on any arrangement points. So after I have the arrangement points on this avatar, I want to save it. So save as avatar. So I'm going to save this as male avatar. So I'm just going to name it male just because the file will be an extension of AVT, which is avatar. So once I hit save, let me look at the directory. It'll be the male.avt file. So if I delete all avatars, I open up an avatar. I have the OBJ that I had will not have any of the arrangement points or bounding volumes, but if I open up the AVT now and I look at it, all the points are saved in there. So after you make it, make sure you save out your avatar so you have it. Other than that, guys, that was basically the quick rundown on these arrangement points and bounding volumes. So guys, if you have any questions, send them my way. But other than that, this is pretty easy, pretty simple. You could get this done very quickly. So you could use your own mesh, or you could use the mesh that I provided. Either way, it's pretty simple to add. I'll see you in the next demo. Thanks, everyone.